Masked vigilantes storm immigrant markets, destroy the merchandise, and hand it out to Russian passersby. They demand apologies from foreigners who've allegedly insulted Russians and show up at schools when immigrant children fight with locals. Russia's top prosecutor personally reviews their complaints, and their leaders host shows on state television. This isn't some underground terrorist cell. This is the Russian community, and until recently, they had Vladimir Putin's full support. Now they're being labeled extremists by the same government that created them. Today, I want to show you how Putin's Russia built the perfect nationalist organization and why it's now trying to destroy it. The Russian community operates across Russia like a nationalist emergency service. They've developed a smartphone app that works as an alarm button. Press SOS and their rapid response team shows up. Officially, they help change flat tires. In reality, they confront anyone they perceive as threatening Russian interests. In the industrial city of Yekaterinburg, they destroyed an immigrant-run vegetable market and handed out the goods to passersby. In the Chelyabinsk region, they conducted unauthorized raids on public buses. In another city, over 60 members joined police in raiding the central market using drones, ultimately expelling 13 people from the country. These activities apparently made local authorities uncomfortable with the group's growing power and independence. The Russian community's lawyers are preparing legal challenges, but the pattern is familiar to anyone who studied Russian politics under Putin. The story reveals a fundamental contradiction in Putin's system. The government needs popular mobilization and grassroots support, especially during wartime, but it also fears any organization that might develop independent agency. The Russian community's mistake wasn't disloyalty. It was becoming too successful at organizing Russians around their own agenda, rather than the Kremlin's. The organization currently claims 660,000 Telegram subscribers and operates in nearly every Russian region. That represents a significant base of organized, motivated supporters with their own communication networks and operational capabilities. From Putin's perspective, such organizations are useful tools until they become potential threats. Whether the Russian community will suffer the same fate as previous ultra-right groups remains unclear. They might successfully navigate current pressures by demonstrating greater loyalty and restricting activities to officially sanctioned operations. Or they might discover what many Russian activists have learned, that in Putin's system, there's ultimately no such thing as loyal opposition, only temporarily useful allies. The Russian community's experience illustrates how authoritarian governments handle grassroots movements, even supportive ones. They're welcomed when useful, controlled when successful, and eliminated when independent. It's a pattern that offers lessons far beyond Russia's borders. For now, they continue operating across the country, conducting raids, monitoring immigrants, and providing the nationalist energy the Kremlin claims to want. But their troubles in the Chelyabinsk region suggest that even the most loyal supporters can quickly become problems when they grow too powerful. In Putin's Russia, the question isn't whether authorities will eventually move against any independent organization. It's whether groups can remain useful without becoming threatening. History suggests that's an almost impossible balance to maintain. Their rapid growth reflects a pattern that's played out repeatedly in Putin's Russia. For over 2 decades, the Kremlin has systematically destroyed independent nationalist movements while attempting to create controllable alternatives. This strategy began long before they targeted liberal opposition groups. Russian authorities worked out the entire scheme for banning organizations on ultra-right movements first. The crackdown intensified after events like the 2010 riots in central Moscow, when thousands of nationalists clashed with police following the murder of a Russian football fan by men from the North Caucasus region. The government responded by tightening extremism laws and banning major organizations like the Movement Against Illegal Migration and the Slavic Union. But the Kremlin also experimented with creating their own controlled nationalist groups. They supported an organization called Russian Image to compete with independent movements, only to discover it had a secret combat wing that committed actual terrorist attacks, including the 2009 murders of a prominent lawyer and journalist in central Moscow. As one former nationalist leader explains,
"The authorities have never tolerated criticism from the right. They were ready to tolerate criticism from liberals or leftists, but not from nationalists, because they believed they themselves were leading the patriotic wave."
The Russian community seemed to solve this problem perfectly. They provided nationalist energy without nationalist criticism, supported the war effort, promoted traditional values, and focused their anger on immigrants rather than government policies. They became the acceptable face of Russian ultranationalism. But that acceptance is ending. Regional authorities in the Chelyabinsk area, an industrial region in the Urals, recently ruled that their local Russian community branch was an undesirable organization of an extremist nature. They ordered the compilation of lists identifying government employees who had joined the group's online chats. This bureaucratic language masks a serious threat. In Russia, being labeled extremist can mean years in prison, and government employees face immediate dismissal for association with banned groups. The move recalls how state workers were fired for supporting opposition leader Alexei Navalny. The crackdown followed several troubling incidents. A conflict involving the Russian community escalated into a shooting that wounded one person, serious enough that Russia's top investigative official personally took control of the case. There were also unauthorized raids on public transportation, and the involvement of over 60 members in official police operations using surveillance drones. They prepare for these operations seriously. The organization holds Orthodox Christian festivals featuring organized fistfights, and many regional branches center around combat sports clubs. Military veterans form what they call their power block, the core teams that conduct street patrols and raids. What makes the Russian community unique among extremist organizations is their loud support for Vladimir Putin and the current government. Unlike typical far-right groups that oppose the establishment, they present themselves as loyal patriots defending traditional Russian values. They repeatedly emphasize being outside politics and describe their work as mutual assistance for ordinary Russians. This loyal nationalism made them incredibly valuable to the Kremlin, especially after Russia invaded Ukraine. The organization emerged in 2020, founded by 3 political operators who understood how to tap into conservative anger. They initially built their following by promoting COVID skepticism, but everything changed when Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. The war legitimized extreme nationalism. The Russian community transformed from a fringe conspiracy group into Russia's largest ultra-right organization practically overnight.